Ore! What up, sister? Hey, Teddy. I have missed you so much, my man. You must be working like crazy because I have not seen you in months. I was asking the girls about you here a while back, a couple weeks ago, and they said you'd been working a lot. So I'm not on Facebook much anymore. But I have missed you, my man. I don't get many men in these reads, and I like to hang on to the ones I get. How is everybody this morning? Are we bright-eyed and bushy-tailed? Vincy Lou Who is in the house. Ha ha. You said hi to me before you said hi to Ori. You even said hi to Teddy before you said hi to Ori. Ha ha ha. That's hilarious. That's because Ori is usually the last one in here, and you're usually the first one in here. I'm on day with you girls. Oh, my eyeballs. Do I look like I just woke up? Do I need this on? Is that worse? Better? Still want to show my wrinkles. Everybody thinks I'm 25 now as it is. I need to keep it that way. Oh, I know who that is. Sorry. There was a vehicle leaving the road over there. And I don't figure out who it is. I guess they're going to church. Oh, honey. Keep you out of trouble, Teddy. But it'll make you old in a hurry, too, Bubba. Be careful about working them too many hours. We youngins don't. We 25-year-olds. We don't work them overtimes very well anymore. I should know. Do it almost every week, don't I, Ori? Yeah, Vincy, I got up, took my shower. I thought it was about 8:30, 9 o'clock. I didn't look at the clock. Got out of the shower. Was walking through the house to get to my room in here to get dressed, and I was going to go fix me some breakfast and sit down and enjoy a biscuit or two and have some coffee, and got to read Nori's messages there, and I was like, oh, and I looked at the clock and it was 25 minutes till 10, and I was like, we got time for coffee and clothes, and that's all. So here I is. All righty, let's see. Oh, it's just 10 o'clock. We got time. We got time to chit chat. So, Teddy, what kind of work do you do? Is it construction? See, I told you, Teddy. We were looking for you. I thought that's what you told me was construction. And you guys got to get it in before the winter hits, don't you? Because you're in New Hampshire, Maine, somewhere, Vermont, somewhere through there. Up there where they get real snow. Up there where I don't want no snow. I ain't lost nothing in that part of the world. Yeah, that's what I thought. I'll watch that Maine Cabin Master sometimes, where they go and rebuild the the vacation homes on the lakes and whatever, and their cabins, and and I'm like, nope, nope, no, thank you. Sometimes they do it. They'll go look at them in the wintertime, but they can't do anything because they got to haul everything in. Exactly. We're wimpy girls. We like all this. Ooh, man. That is something you got to get done before winter. Whew. That sounds wicked. Oh, crap. Hold on. So, okay, that thought went right out the window. I don't even know what I was going to talk about. Okay, anybody else got something? Yeah, that's what I was going to talk about. The three of us triplets, we like it warm, and when it starts getting cold here, well, it's already like it's 70 now, and I'm already bitching. But yeah, when it starts getting cold here, you're gonna hear me crying. But yeah, we three live like Vincy lives down on the Gulf Coast of Texas, and Ori, aka Nina, lives down in Florida. So yeah, we don't like cold weather. I'm on that borderline warm weather. And in about 20 years, when I can retire, I'm gonna go to South Georgia for the South Georgia, North Florida, maybe for the wintertime, and come back up here to North Georgia in the summertime. Or I might go visit Vincy in the summertime, in the wintertime. Who knows? Take my turns. I'll go stay at Nina's house one year and go stay with Vincy one year. we can wreak havoc on their little towns in our motor scooters. Oh my gosh. What fun, what fun. Vincy, Nina, your sirs would be ready to boot us all out. They wouldn't want me ever to come back. But I think it would be funny. Just saying. All righty. Nina, have you talked to Stella? Do you know if she's coming or not? It's about time to get started. All righty. All right. Y'all ready to see this? So, Miss Stella posted this book. Okay, well, I'll give you guys a little rundown about it. She posted this book in the Nookie, in the book nook, and I read it. I read what I read the blurb about it and stuff, and it's about a mage and a human, both males, and a squirrel. And the squirrel is trying to get the mage and the human together. And if anybody knows me, the girls know me really well. I have squirrel moments. Well, I just had one. That thought went right out the window, and it was hanging on to the tail of a squirrel. The squirrel stole it to go bury it or something. Probably that. So I messaged Nina and I said, I gotta read this book. My whole world of squirrels here on my desk every day is, this is a perfect book for me. Not to mention, I like mages. I have this thing about mages, and it's I love mages almost as much as I love shifters. So I'm trying to see. I looked this up the other day and I done forgot it. Scurry of squirrels. That's what they're called. A dray or a scurry. Although squirrels only are together during their family time, but the way I look at it is I got 4 squirrels on my tree at one time fighting or not, and they're scurry. Okay. See, you didn't see, didn't I say so? So I told Nina, I said, get it on here. I got to read it. So here it is. And it's by Stella Rainbow, and it's called Touch of Magic, The Mages of Ravenshire. And this is book 1. So there's going to be more books. I'm so excited. And it's a short read. It's only 70,000 words. So it's a short read. It's that would be considered like a novella, I think. Yeah, that's a novella. So, it'll take you an hour or two to read it, depending on how slow you read, how fast you read. And me, it might take 3 days. So, I actually read faster when I'm reading to you guys than I do when I'm reading in my head, because my head, the squirrels get in my head and they go this way, that way, and then I have to go back and reread something. So be grateful I'm reading to you out loud. All right, put my glasses back on. Put my contacts back in yesterday so I could watch my dogs beat up on them volunteers. Actually, I'm really grateful. That game could have gone either way in a hurry. So, all right. I'm not going to read the summary to you because that would give too much away. Okay. Old language of the mages. This is a glossary. Simile is a familiar or an animal companion. A simyar, I hope I'm pronouncing these words right. A simyar is a mate, a person's other half chosen by fate. And then Hindi words is ma is mom, beta is a child or a kid, baha, bai, bay, bay, I think is how it's pronounced. Brother, chote, choti is little one, paneer is cottage cheese, and ik is one. And then J says gods because the Hindi mythology consists of many gods and deities. So the first chapter is from Jay's point of view, and it's called The Angel of Healing. I gasped as I took another step, my lungs burning with the need of oxygen. You can do it, I told myself. 3 more blocks and I'd be home. This was as far as I'd gotten every other time without having to take a break. But I was determined to make it home today. I did not want this illness to take over more of my life than it already had. Walking Padfoot, I most definitely named him after Sirius Black from Harry Potter, was one of the few opportunities I had to get out these days. I was not going to let my fucked up heart and lungs take that away from me, too. The weather was nice today. There's Stella. Yay. I'm loving this book, girlfriend. I am loving this book. The weather was nice today. The sky cloudy with the promise of rain, and the air a cool breeze. The pleasant weather had led to me doing this in the middle of the day in the first place. Usually I waited until the sun had set before getting out, but I couldn't resist the allure of the cloudy skies and the cool breeze. It was 1 mile. A 1 mile walk that my shitty body couldn't manage without having me look like I'd been running for hours. I'd been out for 10 minutes at the most, and yet I was already exhausted. I tightened my grip on Padfoot's leash almost reflexively. I have asthma, so I can relate. 2-minute walks can be hard sometimes. Some days I'm doing fine, some days not so well. I knew he wouldn't run away. He didn't care that I walked at a snail's pace. He was just happy to be out and about. I bit my lip as a wave of dizziness washed over me, and the next thing I knew, I was on my knees on the sidewalk. My lungs were burning as if they'd been deprived of oxygen for years, my heart thudding at an uneven pace in my ears. It had been 1 fucking mile, and I couldn't even do that. Fuck. Padfoot shuffled closer to me, licking the side of my face and whimpering against me. I wanted to comfort him and tell him I was okay, but I couldn't. I couldn't make my body work. I closed my eyes as I tried to keep my emotions in check. Getting frustrated would only hurt me more. My legs felt too weak to get up. Gods, maybe Mama's right. Maybe I wasn't made to do this adult shit. No, I shook off the thought. I would do this. I was tired of being tired. I was tired of being the sick kid, the one who could do nothing. I took a deep breath and forced myself to stand up, slumping against the fence of the tiny house I'd stopped in front of. It looked exactly like my house, like all the houses in this row of cul-de-sacs. But unlike my place, this house was surrounded in greenery. There were so many bushes and plants outside it that it was basically shrouded in greenery. I didn't even notice the man walking towards me until he was standing right before me with a concerned look on his face. I craned my neck up to look up at him, since I was still leaning heavily against the fence. I swallowed hard when my eyes fell on him. Wow. The guy was hot with a capital H. Where are you from, Stella? I wondered if you weren't from over the pond or something, or maybe even down under. Hey, Olivia. Good afternoon, Olivia. We didn't wake you up this time. It figured that our first meeting had to be with me almost dying on his sidewalk. I never had a chance anyway. Not that I knew if he was even into guys. The guy was gorgeous, with soft blonde hair that fell to his shoulders and eyes that were a strange mix of brown and green. He extended a hand as if to touch me before pulling away. Are you okay? That was up with me. What was up with me? My thoughts were heading in places I hadn't thought about in a long time. One look at this gorgeous guy, and I was thinking about things I'd given up on ever experiencing. I needed to get myself under control. The last thing I needed was to go mooning over some guy I just met. I nodded, still a bit breathless. I wasn't sure if the breathlessness had to do with the walk or this man, but I forced myself to take a deep breath. I smiled at him. Yeah, I'm okay. Sorry about that. I went to straighten up my body, and my body betrayed me yet again, making me stumble. I would have fallen flat on my face, except a strong pair of arms grabbed me, steadying me. My heart started racing again, except this time it was for a completely different reason. I breathed in the scent of grass and honey, and for some reason it helped calm my nerves. Well, it helps calm my nerves. Whew, I love those smells. His hand was warm against me, and my skin tingled where he touched me. The sensation was there even after he pulled away, and I rubbed my arms to get rid of the goosebumps that had popped up. Once I was upright, I realized the dizziness had all but disappeared, and I felt much better than I had when I stopped. Seemed like my body had enough time to catch up and hoard some oxygen. Who knew all it would need was me talking to a hot as sin guy to bring my body back on track? Yeah, right. Thanks. No problem. My name's Raphael. I live right here. He hooked a thumb backwards to point at the house, the green land he'd stepped out of. My mind was still stuck on his name. The angel of healing, I found myself saying, and then I blushed. Fuck, shut the hell up, Jay. He didn't need to know about my absolute nerdiness or about my obsession with mythology and fantasy. God's damn it. The one and the same, Raphael said with a wink, a cheery smile lighting up his face. Wow, he was even prettier when he smiled. Shit. I needed to get out of here before I blurted something else out. Um, I'm gonna go. Thanks for your help. No worries. Hey, I'm new in town, and since we're neighbors, would you like to hang out sometime? I nodded, even as I scoffed mentally. No one really wanted to get to know me. Or if they did, they lost interest as soon as they realized how much baggage I carried. Just how long could we be friends with someone who constantly canceled or backed out of plans? Right? How long could you hang on to a friend who never wants to do anything or is such a homebody? Their words, not mine. I wished I could be a good friend to people, but I just couldn't. My fucked up health wouldn't let me. The too many bad days I had to deal with wouldn't let me. Y'all can't tell this, but there's like Harry Potter stuff. This is a Harry Potter mentioning Harry Potter in here just got me thinking. Okay. Making friends was not for me unless it was friends online who could only talk to me and never had to deal with all my daily issues. It was just as well. I didn't need friends who weren't at least willing to understand what it was like to be me. Sure, yeah, maybe later. I waved at him and started walking, keeping my pace steady so as not to enrage my lungs again. Padfoot kept up a steady pace beside me like I knew he would. Once I made it home, I'd treat myself to a tall glass of iced tea and a marathon of movies. What would it be today? Avengers? Harry Potter? Hey, wait. Raphael's voice called, and I looked over my shoulder at him with a raised brow. He stood there with his hands in his pockets, slouched over one side, and a crooked smile on his face. He looked like he was posing for some fashion magazine, except for the ratty t-shirt and jeans he wore. Was that mud on his clothes? You never tell me your name. I smiled at him, remembering that I'd been too caught up in the meaning of his name to give him the same courtesy. It's Jay. Raphael smiled wildly at me as he spoke. It was nice to meet you, Jay. I hope I'll see you again soon. I shot him a smile before looking away so he wouldn't see my flustered state. He wasn't flirting, was he? Nah, my subconscious told me no one in their right mind would flirt with me. The thought had nothing to do with self-esteem issues, or maybe it did. Fuck, I didn't even know anymore. And everything to do with the fact that I looked like a kid despite being 23. Oh, and everything about me screamed baggage. There was no way he was the least bit interested in me. No fucking way. Why was I still thinking about him anyway? Olivia, I got a question for you. Do you have to swap keyboards to go from your everyday life of Russian to talking on here with us in English? Because your English is so good, but I know the Russian alphabet and the English alphabet are completely different. So just curious. It just hit me. See, squirrel. All right, now we're going to read from Raphael's point of view. I watched him walk away, my plans still tingling from when I touched him. My palms still tingling from when I touched him, even though the touch had lasted for only a few seconds. Shut up, Vincy. Even though the touch had lasted for only a few seconds, it had told me a lot more than I'd expected it to. I'd almost jerked my hand away in surprise when my magic had reacted to him. The reaction had been unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My magic had rushed towards him with a speed that had shocked me. Though I'd pulled away as quickly as I could, I'd still sensed something. He was sick, and whatever his illness was, it was killing him, bit by bit. I didn't know why magic had reacted that way, the way it had, but I didn't think it meant anything. It was probably acting up like it did sometimes. If I had more power like the rest of my family did, I would have been able to tell what he was suffering from. I couldn't even I could have even tried to heal him. But I wasn't like my mom or dad or even my little sister. I was Rafe, the runt of the litter, the one who had no powers except for the inherent magic the all mages carried. I was weak and useless, and all the words the people in Ravenshire had whispered behind me, or to my face if they were my parents. I shook off the dark thoughts rationally rationally I knew it wasn't my fault. Magic wasn't something you could increase with practice. You could get better at using it, yes, but the power came from your blood, from your genes. I knew it wasn't my fault that my blood lacked the power the rest of my family had in abundance. Sometimes it was hard to accept. It was even harder to accept that my family saw nothing in me but a failure. They were probably happy that their disgrace of a son had left the island. My thoughts turned back to the man I'd just met as I walked back into the house. When I'd first seen him the day I moved here, I thought he was a kid, a teenager at the most. But something about him had stuck with me, and I'd realized he was actually quite older than he looked. I'd found myself climbing up the tree in my backyard every evening to watch him walk his huge husky dog more times than I could count. I had wanted to approach him but hadn't known how. Even today, I would have missed him if he hadn't have broken his routine and come out earlier than usual. I'd been planting some more shrubs in the small garden when I'd heard movement and spotted him on his knees on the sidewalk. It had taken me a few minutes to approach him because I'd been shocked, worried, and also a little confused. I'd gotten my first real look at him when I'd approached him, and what I saw almost stole my breath. He'd been dressed in a baggy hoodie and jeans that looked a size too big on him, and he was so thin he almost looked malnourished. The look in his deep brown eyes, though, that was the weariness only someone who'd been dealing with pain or suffering for a long time would have had in their eyes. I'd know. I saw that look every time I came across the mirror. Something about him had resonated with me. I felt like if we got a chance to talk, we'd discover we were similar in a lot of ways. But then again, he'd blown me off when I'd asked him if he wanted to hang out. I'd felt like it was something he did a lot. But what if he really wasn't interested in hanging out with me? Even so, I knew that I couldn't leave him alone. I'd seen something else in his eyes in that split second before he turned away. Something I related to only too well: loneliness. I felt like he could do with having a friend, or at least someone to talk to. Honestly, so could I. Nia, the squirrel. Stella, I'm not sure how to pronounce this. Nia, the squirrel who had taken residence under my roof, scampered up my arm and settled herself on my shoulder. Her bushy tail tickled my ear as I reached up to pet her. Ooh, India. Naya. Look, Nina, she even named the squirrel after me. Ah! Naya the squirrel who had taken residence under my roof, scampered up my arm and settled herself on my shoulder. Her bushy tail tickled my ear as I reached up to pet her. Hello, Miss Naya. What did you do today? I'd found the squirrel in my backyard the day I moved in. Somehow, she'd broken her leg and ended up sprawled at the base of the large oak tree in my backyard. I'd taken her in and patched her up through it, though it had taken me some time to realize that my magic worked on her. The day she'd started hopping around and moving without pain, I'd felt such. Okay, let me read back. I read that wrong, y'all. I'm sorry. I'd taken her in and patched her up, though it had taken me some time to realize that my magic worked on her. The day she started hopping around and moving without pain, I'd felt such a rush of pride and joy at having helped her. At that moment, I'd realized how my parents must feel when they healed someone, and I'd wished for the millionth time that I could do the same. I could heal animals, though, and that was better than nothing, right? I think it's better than better. Naya chattered at me, her little paw gripping my ear and moving me and making me laugh. I wasn't sure if it was because I'd healed her or because she was just friendly. But Naya had decided to adopt me once she healed. Who was I to stop her from loving on me? At least someone valued my power now, flimsy as it may be. Oh, I can't wait to tell my boss about a squirrel name with my name. Oh, he'll just be. He will never let me live it down. I pulled her onto my palm, grinning when she immediately grabbed my thumb. Leaning forward, I pressed a kiss on top of her head, chuckling when she swatted at me with her tail. All right, scamp. Don't go into the laundry room again, or it won't be my fault if you end up in the washing machine. I placed her on the floor and she immediately scampered towards the kitchen area. I had a I had a dish of nuts for her in there, and I knew she would help herself to it before escaping to her treat. I shook my head as I got to my feet and looked around the place that was now my home. It was bare at the moment, just a couch and a coffee table I'd bought a few days ago. I didn't like the lack of greenery. The first thing I'd done when I moved in last week was buy a lot of bushes and plants for my yard. Looking around at my bare living room, I felt like I needed some indoor plants too. Ravenshire had been full of greenery, and though I definitely didn't miss the people, I yearned to be back in Ravenshire. It was a small island, but it was the most beautiful place I'd ever seen. Ravenshire was the only reason I'd stuck around my parents for a whole century and a half. If I hadn't if I hadn't loved the island so much, I'd have moved to Mistvale a lot sooner. Nina is Ori, Teddy. So, yeah, she's just fine. Ori, Nina, talk to Teddy. He's worried about you. I blew out of breath as I walked into the kitchen, wondering what I was supposed to do now. For the last 150 years, yes, I'm that old, but I look like I'm in my mid 20s. Cool trick, huh? I lived in my parents' house and assisted them in whatever way I could, which wasn't usually much. They were rich, so I'd always had enough money. Most of that money was now invested in some different avenues, leaving me with a nice safety net to fall back on. I'd left my parents with a brief letter telling them I'd had it with them treating me like I didn't matter. I'd asked them not I'd asked them to not try to contact me, but I'd hoped they would. I'd hoped in some small part of me that they would care enough to at least call me. 1 week later, I was still waiting for that call. I didn't regret my decision, though. Being here all alone was still better than the verbal torture. I missed Ravenshire, but maybe I'd be able to make a home here in Mistvale. Tea and Cookies, Grandma Style. Chapter 2, Raphael. I grinned as I looked around the living room. It had taken me almost a week to get this place just right. The house I'd bought on the edge of the Silent Creek Park was small, but it was home. Now, a week and a half after moving here, I finally felt like this place was mine. I'd spent the last week making sure every aspect of this place reflected me, and I couldn't stop smiling as I looked around the place. The sliding glass door that led into the backyard was open, so Naya could come and go as she wished, and I'd hung some cute cream colored net drapes to pretty the place a bit. The couch I'd gotten was also cream colored, and green throw pillows covered half of it, giving it a comfy feel. The wall behind the couch had a nice set of hexagonal frames that I'd picked up at the market. Small potted plants were placed inside each frame, with green vines hanging out of them, giving the room the greenery I needed. My magic was attuned to nature, and keeping myself surrounded in greenery helped keep my energy full. It wasn't like I had much use of what powers I had, but even so, living among plants was comforting, and I'd always felt more at home surrounded by them, hence the house at the edge of the park. I'd placed some I'd placed some taller show plants in the corners of the room with a few herb plants and pots I'd hung from the ceiling. I wasn't sure what a human would think if they saw my place. Did common humans have so many plants in their house? Not if I got to water them. I have a hard time watering myself half the time. Would they think I was crazy or just a bit of a nature freak? I shook my head as my thoughts drifted back to the human who had fallen on his knees in front of my house a week ago. I had still watched him every evening since that day, though I honestly hadn't meant to turn into a stalker. I was just a bit worried about him because he was clearly sick. Coming from a family of healers, I wasn't in the habit of ignoring someone who needed help. At least that was the reason I gave myself when I found my thoughts returning to him again and again. Something about him had stuck with me. Part of me yearned to go check up on him just to make sure he was okay. I don't know why, but I needed to know he was okay. I felt restless at the idea that he might be in pain. It was like an itch under my skin that I just couldn't get rid of, and it seemed to grow worse the longer I went without seeing him. Groaning in frustration, I walked into the backyard, smiling as a calm washed over me once I reached the oak tree. The tree was old and huge, and it had been one of the reasons I bought this exact house. The old owners had been planning to chop the poor thing down because apparently people wouldn't buy the house with a tree behind it. I'd taken one look at the gorgeous monstrosity and I'd known I needed to save it. I'd made an offer without even going inside the house, my only focus being the tree stayed the way it was. The tree reminded me a little of the huge willow tree we had in Ravenshire, right by the shrine of Elder Rayner. Elder Rayner had been the mage who discovered Ravenshire some 500 years ago and turned it into a safe haven for all the mages. His simile, the animal companion every mage who was worthy of them was gifted with, had been a raven, which was how the name Ravenshire came to be. If the stories were to be believed, the shrine of Elder Rayner stood right in the center of the island, the town wrapped all around it with circular winding streets. The willow tree had been the perfect lookout. We'd climb up its branches, hanging on with our toes. From the top, we could almost always see the whole island. The stone mansion belonging to the Romanoff family, the docks and huts near the lakes that were the home of the few water mages that lived there. Water and air mages were more likely to move around and not settle down, a trait they probably got from the elements they had an affinity towards. In that sense, I was the complete opposite. My affinity was to Mother Earth. That would be me. And I had a connection with all things that grew on her, with from tiny weeds to huge trees. Like the plants, I needed to feel settled down, to feel like I had roots in a place to be completely comfortable. I'd felt that in Ravenshire, but not in my own home. Now here in Mistvale, I was hopeful I'd feel that again. That sense of home I yearned for. I shook off the lingering tension in my arms and jumped, grabbing hold of one of the lower branches of the oak tree before hauling myself up. Once I was there, I didn't stop. Oh, I miss climbing trees. I kept climbing until I'd reached the last branch that would support my weight from this height. I could see the whole cul-de-sac. The houses were in a rough circle with the Silent Creek Park at my back, and I could see all the houses from here, including Jay's. I couldn't see him. I could see him too. He was just stepping out of his house with his dog, leash in hand. I stopped feeling like a stalker by now, and I watched as Jay and his dog walked down the short driveway, turning towards my house. I knew I should look away, but I kept watching as they walked. The dog tugged on the leash every few seconds, his head cocked to one side, while Jay walked at a slow, sedate pace. It was even slower than the pace he had maintained the last time I seen him, and I wondered if he was feeling even worse. I wanted to check up on him. I wanted to hold his hand and figure out exactly what he was suffering with. The thing was, I had no clue how I could do that without coming off as a crazy guy or a weirdo. It wasn't like I could tell him I was a mage, and it wasn't like I'd be able to help him even if I knew what he was suffering from. I knew the way my magic had acted the other day had been nothing but a fluke, and there was no way I'd be able to help him. So, why was I so obsessed with this man? Why couldn't I just let him go? And why had I turned into a stalker in my attempt to get to know more about him? I swore as I watched the dog tug on his leash a bit too hard and escape Jay's hold. Jay looked stunned for a second as if he couldn't comprehend what had happened, but then he seemed to gather himself and chase the dog, though I knew he wasn't healthy enough to be doing that. I switched my gaze to the dog and watched it sneak into my neighbor's yard. I knew they had a dog. Seemed like Jay's doggo just wanted to make a friend. I scrambled down the tree and raced to the front just as Jay appeared on the sidewalk. My sudden appearance startled him, and he went down in the exact same spot I'd found him the last time. I heard him curse as he went down and hurried to help him, pulling him upright. He swayed in my arms, and I realized he was dizzy. Just like last time, my magic reacted without my urging, and the amount of pain I sensed in him almost made me stagger. There were a few cuts on his palm from where he scraped them on the sidewalk, and they were coated with a thin layer of blood. But the pain Jay felt was too much to be just from that cut. What the hell happened to him? Seems like it's raining everywhere. It's been raining here for 2 days, 3 days. Come on, you need to sit, I said, leading him to my small porch. We were almost there when he froze suddenly, making us almost fall over since he had been leaning against me. What's wrong? Pads. Pads, my dog. I need to find him. Let me go. I tightened my grip around his waist as he tried to get away. Calm down, calm down. I saw him sneak to a neighbor's yard. How about you get seated here and I'll go get him, okay? Jay looked up at me with his brown eyes that reminded me of fresh turned soil, a sheen of wetness covering them. You'll find him? I promise. Just take a seat and I'll get him. His name is Padfoot. Padfoot, Jay explained as he took a seat on the porch, his eyes snapping shut as if he was trying to fight another wave of dizziness. All right, hold on. I'll be right back. I wanted to hold him for a minute and maybe try to reduce some of his pain, but I didn't know if my magic would be of any help. The best way I could help Jay right now was by getting his dog back. Then I'd patch up his wounds. I may not have I may not have the help of my magic, but I knew how to do basic first aid. I wasn't completely useless, no matter what my parents liked to tell me. J. I kept my eyes shut as I took a few shallow breaths and tried to escape the dizziness. I knew my hands weren't hurt too badly, but my body apparently hadn't gotten the memo. It was the same every time. No matter how few drops I bled, my body always reacted like I was on the brink of death, making me dizzy and unsteady. I couldn't believe I'd stumbled in front of Raphael again. My on my knees again. If it wasn't so absolutely humiliating, it would be funny how I ended up on my knees every time I came across Raphael. But it was. It was so damn embarrassing. I wish the ground would open up and swallow me so I wouldn't have to face him again. Why did this keep happening? He was leaps and bounds out of my league, and I knew there was no way he wanted me. The least I could have done was maintained my distance. Maybe we could have even became friends for a short while before he realized how soul-sucking being my friend was. Instead, I took every opportunity to humiliate myself in front of him. Fuck, I was pathetic. Vincy, I told you it was good. I bet Mini Me is bucking Nina. A cheery wolf or her four-legged Mini Me is probably bugging Nina. A cheery wolf broke me out of my self-deprecating thoughts, and then Pads was there, covering my face with licks. My heart stuttered in my chest as relief swamped over me, and I pulled him into my arms, holding onto his neck tightly as I let his familiar furry body comfort me. Padfoot wasn't just my dog. He was my companion, my partner in crime, and the only being in the world who wasn't tired of dealing with me. He didn't care if I couldn't take him on walks every day, or if there were days where all I wanted to do was lie in bed and cuddle him. He didn't mind that I never went out, that I could almost never play with him. He was just there for me. I loved him, and even the thought of losing him was enough to make me panic. I finally opened my eyes to see Raphael watching us with a soft smile on his face. My cheeks blazed hot as I gave him what I hoped was a grateful smile. Thank you so much for finding him, Raphael. It was no problem. He was just socializing with the neighbor's dog. Also, call me Rafe. I nodded and bit my lip as I readied myself to stand up. Stella, I want to say this is one of the best edited books I've read in a long time, and it's so good that I keep stumbling over stuff. I'm so used to having to correct everybody's editing as I go in my head. I can't read a straight book apparently. I nodded and bit my lip as I readied myself to stand up. I felt steadied enough that I knew I wouldn't stumble. All right, then, I'll get out of your hair. Sorry for troubling you again. Raphael's brows shot up to his hairline as he shook his head as he walked closer. Oh, no, you're not leaving yet. I need to clean up those scratches on your palms. God knows what nasty you picked up from the sidewalk. How about you come in and I'll patch you up over some tea and cookies? Tea and cookies? I almost chuckled because that had been my grandma's go-to for every problem. Wow, I just compared my neighbor and hopefully potential friend to my grandmother. Way to go, Jay. Raphael was walking over to his door before I could decline his invitation. He held the door open and looked at me expectantly, with a sigh and a shake of my head. I grabbed Padfoot's leash and led him inside. The floor plan of Raphael's house seemed similar to mine, but while my living room was decorated in soft browns, Raphael's was an explosion of beige and green. There were plants everywhere. It gave the room a cool, minty atmosphere, and a strange sort of calm washed over me. Did I say washed? I hope I didn't. A strange sort of calm washed over me as I took a seat on his beige couch, which was half covered in pillows. Green pillows. First, I'll disinfect your wounds and then I'll make you some tea, all right? I nodded as he walked into where I guessed the bathroom was, and came back with a first aid kit. He knelt on the floor in front of me, his blonde hair falling into his face as he looked through the first aid kit. My fingers itched to tuck the strand behind his ear. I bit my lip to stop myself. What the fuck was wrong with me? He was a stranger, no matter how gorgeous or kind he was. He tucked his hair behind his ear as he grabbed my palm lightly in his. The moment our skin touched, a strange zing ran through my body, followed immediately by a strange sense of calm. I seemed to wash over my it seemed to wash over my body, and I knew I was just imagining it, but I almost felt like the aches in my body became less intense as the feel washed over me. I shook my head to get rid of the weird feeling and focused on Raphael as he soaked a cotton ball into a disinfectant and swiped it over my palm in careful, light strokes. I'd gotten so used to all kinds of medical treatments from so many people that his gentleness took me by surprise. The nurses weren't exactly harsh, but I was just another patient to them. Raphael, though, he treated my wounds as if he cared. Nah, it was just fanciful thinking. Why the hell would Raphael care about me? As he treated my hand, I realized I should probably tell him why he kept finding me on my knees on his sidewalk. Nothing worked easier at pushing someone away than telling them you were terminally ill. Sorry I keep falling over at your place. I swear it isn't intentional. I have a rare heart illness, which has also fucked up my lungs. So sometimes I get exhausted easily. Well, most of the time. It's okay. You don't need to explain yourself to me, Raphael said, shooting me a soft smile that lit up his unique eyes. I'd never seen eyes quite like his before. They were a mix They were a mix of green and brown, but they were much darker than any green eyes I'd ever seen. If I had to compare, I'd say his eyes looked like tree bark coated in moss. It looked way more enchanting than it sounded. I was surprised when he went back to covering the cuts with small band-aids as if confession meant nothing. Usually, when I told people about my illness, they had a million questions. How long have you been sick? Is it terminal? What about treatments? Yet here he was acting as if my illness was no big deal. For the first time, a ray of hope filled me. Okay. For the first time, a ray of hope filled me. Could I actually have a shot? Did I have a chance at making Raphael my friend? All done. Now, how about some tea? Or would you prefer coffee? No caffeine. No caffeine, please. Tea sounds great. Caffeine didn't gel well with my medicines. If I was being honest, a lot of things didn't jam with me. Normal friendships was one of them. I had two best friends, and one of them was my younger brother, while the other one was someone I only talked to online. It wasn't that I hadn't tried, I had so many times. I'd made friends only for them to slowly drift away after one too many canceled plans. Sooner or later, they realized I would never be there for them the way they had to be there for me. I'd never be able to go to a party with them or a trip or even hang out someplace for longer than an hour. I didn't fault them for ditching me. I would have probably done the same if the roles were reversed. It still stung, though. It also taught me that I wasn't made to have friends. I had Padfoot, though, and my brother, and they were enough. I needed them to be enough, or I knew I'd succumb to the depression that was always there, waiting for me to feel weak to pounce on me. And if I didn't already have enough problems to deal with, you okay? Raphael asked as he placed a tray with 2 cups of tea, sugar, cream, and some cookies on the coffee table before me. I looked up at him and blinked, wondering if I was seeing things. There wasn't a squirrel on his shoulder, right? Is that a squirrel? My voice was so soaked in disbelief, yet all Rafe did was push the squirrel's bushy tail away from his face and grin at me. Oh yes, this is Naya. Naya. She lives here too. Well, she lives in the tree in my backyard, but she spends most of her time in here. You have a pet squirrel? I stated in a dry voice, still a bit reluctant to believe that I was seeing what I was seeing and what he was telling me. They looked adorable together, to be honest. The squirrel, Naya, had wrapped herself around Raphael's neck and looked all kinds of comfy as she watched me with her beady black eyes. He scrunched up his nose in a way that made him look adorable, and I realized he had some slight freckles on his nose that seemed to make him even more cute. I needed to stop noticing how gorgeous he was. I wouldn't call her a pet per se. She's more of a friend to me, honestly. Like me and Padfoot, I said with a smile as I grabbed my cup. I added some sugar, though milk was another no no for me. I had a lot of those too. Thank you, Teddy. If someone were to take a peek into my thoughts, they would think I was the most whiny son of a bitch ever. But then again, it was better to whine where no one could hear me than to come off as pathetic, right? Over the years, I'd gotten used to keeping my pain to myself, mostly because I hated the guilt that came with telling my parents about the way that it had made me feel so much less when I was with my friends. Yep, you can let him go, The backyard is secure. He won't go anywhere. Raphael said as he took a seat on a nearby armchair. I nodded and unclipped Padfoot's leash, but instead of going outside like I thought he would, he rushed to Raphael's side and started sniffing Naya. Raphael chuckled and petted Pads as he continued to sniff Naya. The tiny squirrel clung to, to Rafe's ear for a minute before hesitatingly reaching for Padfoot. My sweet boy froze immediately, standing stock still as Naya hopped onto his back. He went a bit cross-eyed trying to find the squirrel, but then he seemed to shrug and race off towards the backyard, Naya holding on to him for the ride. He wouldn't hurt her, right? I wondered aloud. Padfoot was a sweet guy, but he was huge compared to Naya. No, I bet they'll already be friends by the time you leave. I grinned at his pronouncement and went back to sipping my tea. The silence turned awkward quite quickly since we were both still strangers. I looked around the room trying to find something to talk about because I knew I'd start getting anxious if the awkwardness continued. You have a lot of plants, I blurted out, immediately cringing at my obvious statement. Raphael didn't seem to mind, though. He just gave me this wide smile that lit up his dark eyes and nodded. Yeah, I guess I'm a nature lover. I bought this place because of the tree in the backyard. I like the greenery, I suppose. I nodded as I peeked out the back door, and the sound of surprise and awe slipped out of me as I spotted the humongous oak tree in his backyard. Damn, the tree was huge. If I were healthy, I would have loved nothing more than to climb that tree. I used to do that when I was a kid, back before my condition turned so bad that even the slightest exertion tired me. I miss doing that. I miss doing a lot of things. I shook my I shook off the thoughts with a practiced precision and focused on Raphael as he sipped his tea. The guy was gorgeous. I couldn't stop thinking about that. It wasn't just his physical attributes either. He was a sweet guy. He helped me both the times he had met me, and I'd never felt like I'd inconvenienced him, even though everyone, including my parents, made me I'll bet unintentionally. I hated how much I had to depend on others, and yet I didn't feel like that when he helped me. The way his presence always seemed to calm me down or reduce my exhaustion was something I couldn't figure out. Did I feel better because I enjoyed his company? That had to be it, right? After all, what else could it be? You live just a few houses away, right? Raphael asked, pulling me out of my thoughts. I nodded and he smiled before extending his hand, palm up. Can I have your phone for a minute? My brows furrowed at the strange request, but I pulled my phone out of my pocket and handed it to him, curious about what he wanted it for. He tapped a few keys before handing the phone back to me. There, you have my number now. Feel free to call or text if you'd like to hang out sometime. You want to be my friend? I asked, and the disbelief couldn't have been clearer in my voice. Raphael grinned at me wickedly before flashing me a wink. He picked up the empty tray and walked off. When he reached the doorway, he called out as he went, friends would be a good place to start, don't you think? Wait, what? And that's where I'm ending it, girls and boys. You gonna have to go get the book if you want to find out what happens. I got my book, so I bought it the day I read about it. Instantaneously. One click that sucker. Okay. It's free on KU or it's $4.99 if you want to buy it from Amazon. I don't know. Stella, can you tell us what other? All right, there's your Instagram. Stella, can you tell us what other platform? Is it on anything else besides Amazon? Whew, I put lotion on my face after my shower. I can feel it. Ugh. I know, Vincent. I know. All righty. And when is book 2 coming out? Because I'm going to have to get that one too. Just saying. I am loving this book. Okay. I just want to say that. I'm loving this book. I love urban fantasy books if they're not too, they have to be, they have to have that excitement to it. They can't be too down to earth. Like this book is going to remind me of, even though it, as of yet, it hasn't gotten there. I don't know. I haven't read the entire book yet. That's what I'm going to do today. Um, I'm a huge fan of Harry Potter. I'm a huge fan of Divergent. I'm a huge fan of Hunger Games. I love all that stuff. My niece and I, she's 23, and we grew up. I raised her on those books, and she's like, "Oh, can we start this? Can we read this?" And here I go. And I got hooked into them, and I love them. So, yeah, this is gonna fall into those books, and she's gonna have a field day when she reads this. Oh no! Alrighty. The good thing, Stella, is you can go back and reread it or re-listen to it if you like. It will stay posted on here. I haven't had to start removing anything yet, so we're good. All right, everybody. What's my schedule this week? Because I don't even know. Pincy, do you know my schedule, darling? I need to get you on to that. I need to get you on our sheets. Okay. Oh, that's my Sundays. I don't want that one. I want back, back, back. Okay, there it is. Okay. So, ooh. Wednesday, I have Arthur Ray Sostre. He is from NYC, and his books are supposed to be really good. I don't know yet. And then Thursday is going to be, she hadn't changed it on here because I had a cancellation Thursday. Thursday is going to be Pebbles Lacoste. So, Pebbles Lacrosse. Why do I always do that to her? Anyways, that one is one of her little books, and I'm going to be reading the whole book. So come prepared, and yes, you will need a Holish kit for that one. So, alrighty, everybody. Stella, thank you so much for letting me read your book. I so appreciate that. That was just perfect. Yes, I will be. I'm going to have the Book Nook subscribe to you on Instagram as well. So, alrighty. Everybody have a ooh, Stella Stargazers. Yep, we'll be following that one too. Ugh. Okay. So I will get with Nina and we'll try to get you on in mid-December. Give you enough time. We'll probably be kind of open on Sunday. So, all righty. And hey, Olivia, let's start trying to schedule, if she's up for it. Let's try to start scheduling Olga for Sunday mornings, because that makes it easier on you guys and makes it easier to get in here. So, all right, everybody, have a wonderful day. Good start to your week. Be safe. Practice social distancing. Wear your mask. And just stay out of big groups. Stay home and read. That's what we all like to do anyway. Just stay home and read. And write, Miss Stella. All right, everybody. Have a wonderful day and happy reading.